Today we're going to look at the issues facing East Palo Alto, where voters are going to be electing new members to the City Council, the Ravenswood City School District, School Board, and Measure HH, the tech tax. Sue, you've been covering East Palo Alto and spoke with almost all of the City Council candidates. There's one who just would not participate in interviews.
Right.
So there's 7, 5 are challengers, 2 incumbents.
Right.
Let's start by talking about just some of the big issues that are facing East Palo Alto.
Well, I think that, it's sort of like, and we talk about Measure HH, I think that's sort of, somebody gave me a little bumper sticker that said, hella housing. And I think that kind of is the main issue, is really about housing in East Palo Alto. Gentrification, the displacement of many residents, and jobs. Job creation is another thing where you have a community that has traditionally had many people who are more in the service worker, not exclusively so, let's make that a point, but because there are also people who are tech workers there and professionals, but lower paying jobs, and so how do they keep up? If you don't have the skill set, this is one of the things that the city is really kind of trying to take a proactive and innovative approach on, and that is to develop programs so that people can get skills to have higher paying jobs. So
unlike Palo Alto with the jobs housing imbalance, East Palo Alto doesn't have that situation. I mean, it has the need for job creation and job skill building.
It needs housing as well. It needs affordable housing. And the housing is necessary because the price of housing has gone up so high now. So I think we've now approached just to purchase a house there. I think the average price is something like close to $1 million.
Yeah.
So
our cover story today. The median is just below $1 million. The average sale price, which is calculated differently, is over $1 million.
Yeah. So you've really got a situation now where it's not affordable. Although there's for just about anyone that that would be living there, that has traditionally lived there for the last 30, 40 years, let's say. But then you also have a situation in which the rental housing, although there's rent control, once somebody moves out, that housing goes up to market level, and it's sort of still under rent control, but so they can only raise it so much beyond that each year. But now you might have something that maybe went for, let's say, less than $1,000 a month for rent, now suddenly jumped to $53,000 a rent per month.
Housing's a regional issue here. Parking and traffic, also regional issues. But in East Palo Alto, there's always an undertone of equity, concerns about gentrification, displacement, as you were saying.
Right.
I mean, it seems like that is a city that's undergoing change at in some ways, a much more rapid pace. From what it's been to what it might be in the future, and that concerns a lot of the council candidates.
Well, yes, and I think you have to consider also that in East Palo Alto, with all of the throes that the community went through with crime and violence, you have a lot and also all of the traffic that the city has to deal with as well. They deal with the brunt of getting all the commuter traffic running right down University Avenue. And so that adds to pollution problems, that adds to health issues, higher rate of asthma. These are all things that are concerning. And with East Palo Alto's land prices now going up, but traditionally people didn't want to live there because of the crime, which is now largely abated. It's like the last piece of property that's people consider, the 2-point-some square mile area that is so-called affordable and considered a bargain. And so people are trying to come in and cash in on it.
I was going to say, it seems, Sue, from reading your profiles, that every single one of these candidates sees the city's relationship with the big employers as kind of like a very critical piece to solving these problems, the traffic problems you just mentioned, and the housing, which is the overlying problem everywhere.
Right.
But there are some differences about what that relationship should be. I know that there was some debate about the Amazon, the Employment Resource Center.
Right.
So can you tell me, what do these candidates think the city should do with employers? Like, are they supporting new ordinances, new laws, new requirements? What do they see as what are the actual solutions that they're proposing that would involve these employers?
Well, one of the things that is certainly Measure HH, which we were going to touch on a little later, but we can bring it up now.
Sure.
And that is that that's the so-called tech tax, although it wouldn't affect necessarily just tech companies.
It's commercial
It's
properties.
whoever comes in, large commercial properties coming in which they have about 1.8 million, I believe, square feet of development that's kind of in the pipeline at this point, and that could double, triple, however you want to look at it. It could go up considerably as the Ravenswood Business District, which is out near Bay Road, as that gets developed over time. That used to be what was the redevelopment district. That was when there was a redevelopment agency. So that has really been sort of earmarked for large-scale commercial development. There's also other projects that are right next to the freeway. Sobrato organization that built where Amazon is right now on the corner of University Avenue and Donahoe Street. They basically want to put in an 8-story building and a 5-story parking garage right behind the Chevron station. And so these are sizable developments that will definitely impact the way the community is going to be able to function, even just on a daily basis.
So would it be fair to say that the preferred solution is just having commercial interests contribute more money? Because there's other methods that I could imagine, like having companies actually build the housing. There's that kind of the first source policy that was being discussed, employment center. So is the fees, the Measure HH fees, kind of like the main thing that everyone coalesces around?
Well, I think pretty much. There may be one or two candidates that are kind of like, yeah, well, maybe Measure H. They're not that hot on it because one of the problems with Measure HH is that it's, from the developer's standpoint, let's talk about what it would do. First of all, it's like it would charge basically $2.50 a square foot for large developments per year. So that could bring in
And
maybe,
large is 25,000 square feet or larger.
25,000 square feet or
Commercial.
larger. Commercial developments. This is not going to affect, the mom and pop business. But developers are saying we already have to spend so much on building that this is ridiculous. We're not going to be able to handle that, and they've been, really trying to say we'll just pull out. There won't be any development in East Palo Alto, which I kind of don't believe personally. I don't know.
Right. Where else would they go that they could afford?
Yeah, and I think when you look at what Measure HH is supposed to do, which most of the candidates support, is that it would give about 35% of the funding that is got from the tax would go towards development of new low-income and affordable housing. So that's first of all, and programs also that are supportive to keep people from ending up becoming displaced. So that's at least 35%. That's the minimum. Then, they also want to develop housing jobs as well. Jobs that would raise the housing, raise your ability to live in the community. So higher income jobs in the STEM, industries and occupations. And this would be training that they would want to do, and also as well have training in construction and those types of jobs that are also higher paying.
So the city council is considering kind of basically requiring employers to provide training to local residents so that they could fill some of the jobs they would generate.
Yeah, at least if they're not going to do the training themselves, then they would at least, this pot of money would enable the development of programs to do that.
There is some difference between, in attitude between the first source hiring policy, which has been in place.
Right.
Isn't it 30%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
30% of jobs created by a company need to be filled by East Palo Alto residents. So Amazon didn't want to fulfill that policy and proposed an alternative, which was to open the employment center.
Right.
So there are some people, though, some candidates who are looking at job creation, job training as a pretty key component.
Yeah, well, I think all of the candidates pretty much see it that way, that job training is important. And if we just kind of look at what happened with the 30% first source hiring, that has never been a mandate. It's always been, it was a policy. And so it was a goal that was sought to reach. But a lot of the businesses that moved in there never got to that point. They said they couldn't find people who had the skills to be able to fill those jobs in the first place. When Amazon decided to come in, they came in and they basically went to a council meeting and said, we want to scrap that requirement. And in lieu of that, we'll give you, I forget what it was, like more than $1 million to start to have a job placement or job training center. The idea they really weren't going to train you in jobs, but help you to get jobs.
Okay,
Either in the community,
referrals out to
either in the
programs.
community, it's more like jobs counseling, in the community or outside the community. And so a lot of people were very upset with that. And they were given, it was basically the council got absolutely no notice on it. It was like, take it or we won't basically put our business here. And so most council members, with the exception of Donna Rutherford, who's an incumbent who's running, voted for it.
And
But
she said she didn't have enough time
that's right.
to really consider the ramifications of that.
Yeah, exactly. She's not one. She likes to study it, and she doesn't. She's not one who wants to just have something rammed down her throat. Essentially, is how she felt, and she really felt that they should have been given much more time, and she thought it would be irresponsible to vote for it. So if they weren't going to give her any more time, she was going to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I feel like some of the solutions we've been talking about are sort of like long-term and the effects will be lagging by nature, whether it's job training or having commercial developers contribute to a fund, because you still have to build the housing, you have to find a developer. And as we know from your coverage, East Palo Alto has some very like immediate problems, particularly concerning RV dwellers, which, these kinds of solutions probably won't help in the interim. So what are some of the candidates and council members' kind of proposed solutions for the kind of current conditions of people living in RVs and kind of the impacts they're causing? And I know it's been kind of a hot issue at a recent meeting. So,
Right.
So are these candidates kind of on the same page with RV dwellers or?
Well, I think, Patricia, we haven't named out all the candidates, first of all.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. So we have, let me see here, so I remember, we have Randall Fields, who is a businessman, but he has not been responsive, so I don't have any information about what his positions are. We have Regina Wallace-Jones, who is I believe I think she works for eBay now, and she is in technology, and she also is a real estate investor as well, and so she kind of has more of that bent and perspective.
And former Facebook and Yahoo.
Yes. Patricia Lopez, who is very much for helping the homeless and in job creation. She wants to keep the 30% source hiring and enhance that program, though she didn't say exactly how that would happen, but she does want to do that. Ruben Abrica, who is the incumbent and one of the two incumbents and mayor, he has also been very supportive of the RV dwellers and trying to get them into have a place where they'll be safe on the street, off the street overnight, and then get them into supportive housing and other social programs. Donna Rutherford, who also is very supportive of basically of housing and issues, seniors. Those are main concerns for her. Court Skinner, who is also he has background in engineering, but he's been very involved. He has Computers for Everyone as a nonprofit that he runs. So he's really into equality types of things and making sure that he would like to see more smaller types of businesses come into the community and have more infrastructure building of things that improve quality of life, like parks and theaters and that type of thing.
I noticed
he was a planning commissioner for 14 years too.
Yes,
planning commissioner,
planning commissioner.
Kind of knows the insides and outs.
Yeah.
I noticed he also had a call for a full-scale supermarket.
Yes.
One of those things that all communities need.
Right, and Bernardo Huerta, who was a planning commissioner for many years, and is also now on the Public Works and Transportation Commission, and he's also for, finding places for smaller businesses, mom and pop types of businesses, and more, not just only the corporations that would come in and the tech companies that would come in and build. And he also has had he keeps a really close eye on all the documents, reads everything. I think, he's very savvy about the ins and outs of the city.
I'm going to put in a plug here for your coverage, which is online, which just to let people know that they can find it on paloaltoonline.atavist, atavist.com. Anyway.
Okay. All right.
That's where they can find both the people, the profiles that you've written, kind of their thoughts on housing and jobs.
Yeah.
But we were mentioning the RV issue, so I'm still kind of hoping to understand a little bit better where the debate is right now, because it sounds kind of heated and if these candidates are kind of in alignment.
Yeah, okay. So most of the candidates, I think, agree that something should be done related to helping people to stay off the street. East Palo Alto is having an increasing number of homeless coming in, both from outside the area and within its own population. And so some of them have ended up living in RVs, and there have been Mainly out on Week Street, there were a lot of problems out near the bay with sewage, raw sewage, garbage, so on and so forth. These are all major issues, and so you have everything from the spectrum of Patricia Lopez, who's very much for, not, I wouldn't say leaving them alone, but supporting them. And then you have maybe more like Regina Wallace Jones is, I think, more for, not making it so easy. I would say that's probably the case there. And in terms of all of the candidates, I think that they're all in agreement that something should be done. But then there's the other issue of, one of the other things that's coming up is having large, oversized vehicles, which would include RVs, be banned from the city streets overnight. This has been a major problem in East Palo Alto. There's tremendous parking issues with people parking all over the place, double parking on streets, enormous vehicles that they bring from work, and sometimes even places where companies are just dumping their stuff, dumping their vehicles to park them, and they're not even in the city. They don't even have a business there because they know they can get away with it. So there's a real big debate going on right now about whether or not there should, how would an overnight parking ban affect, or an overnight parking ban of large vehicles affect the homeless population and just affect the community. And so there was actually big battles over this.
Is there any proposal to have maybe large, oversized vehicles stay in some of the parking lots that are empty?
Yes.
Or is that just for regular-sized cars?
No, actually, I think that that would be something that is being considered. That could be a possibility. I think a number of people, including the incumbent Ruben Abrica, mentioned this as, I think Bernardo's mentioned this as well, Bernardo Huerta, that they wanted to basically, maybe we should start leveraging what's out there. We have some parking areas. We've got parking structures even in like the IKEA, Amazon. When they're not in use, what could be done?
Which is overnight.
Yeah, which is overnight, essentially. You've got the huge parking area where the Ravenswood 101 shopping district is. That's another possibility. I mean, these are all privately owned. So that's one of the things the city doesn't really own very much property itself. I mean, they are looking at using they're using this tankage site right now as temporary parking, overnight parking for, I think it would be up to 20 RVs, while they try to get people services as well, just to get them off the streets at night. But during the daytime, they have to leave.
Right. So that's an interesting situation because it's a private parking lot, parking garages, and they need to figure out all the liability issues.
They have to get buy-in from, and there's liability issues. There are lots of East Palo Alto has no shortage of churches and church parking lots, but they've had very little input from the churches in terms of very little commitment, except for, I think there's maybe 2 that are committed to allowing a few of the RVs to stay there.
I found it interesting that one of the candidates was suggesting using the parking garages for people who come late at night but live in the city, so they park there.
Yeah, and they get a shuttle.
And then there's a shuttle that would go around.
Yeah,
That's
you
interesting
can have
idea.
a shuttle that would do something like that. So they're trying to think creatively make do with what they have. There's other options of the potential of building a large parking garage. So there are candidates who've talked about that as well, but that is something that, that means then land, it means expense, it means taking years before it actually gets done. It goes through the whole process to be built, and so meanwhile you still have the existing problems.
Yeah. One elephant in the room, of course, is Facebook. Do the candidates actually identify Facebook by name, and what is their stance towards the influence that corporation is having?
Well, I think in large measure, most of them did not come right out and say Facebook is the problem. It's the whole idea that the city's going to be overrun already by the influences of Facebook and the influences of Google. It just by the nature that it has traffic and the fact that it has more affordable housing.
People are moving in.
Yeah, people are moving in. So there's many more tech people moving in. So I think that one of the issues, though, is really Facebook hasn't had any real commitment as far as they're concerned. Outside, they did put up $20 million, which is not a small amount of change, but towards affordable housing. But people feel that the influence outweighs the contribution. And so there's, I think Ruben is one, and Regina Wallace-Jones is another, who really want to kind of leverage corporations, so and people who have a lot of money, and to basically start programs to maybe even like be a funder or an investor in home building or homes so that can be affordable. And then you would have almost, I guess, like a below market rate housing type of thing, almost like what Stanford has, where they own the properties like a lease. Land
leaseholder.
Leaseholder,
Yeah.
and then you get your money back when somebody moves and the housing price goes up. But it would let's say offset the cost of a house that might cost $1 million to purchase, and it's not affordable. But maybe somebody within the community could afford $250,000 or $400,000, and so the idea is that the investor would offset that extra $600,000 or so.
For the city council race, I'm kind of curious to just compare and contrast East Palo Alto versus Palo Alto in terms of finances and influence of endorsements, things like that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
is there money in the East Palo Alto race?
Well, it's kind of interesting. There's probably not money on the scale of any other race, certainly probably not of Palo Alto's. There's really only one candidate who's really stood out in terms of money, and that's Regina Wallace-Jones, and she's got, I believe it was, so far to date, according to her filings, is that she has $23,303, and her contributors are often, there's a lot of her friends you can see, a lot of people within the tech industry that she knows, a lot of lawyers, but standouts are Sandhill Property Company and Woodland Park Communities, two major, Sandhill owns Woodland Park, but they basically large property owners of rental property there. There are also a couple of other investors, people who are investors. Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook gave her about $600. So, you do have the Facebook influence coming in, and as well into this, at least this candidate's funding. Everybody else, basically, you have pretty much self-funded. Court Skinner, I think, has maybe 3 or 4 people, none of whom appear to be in the tech industry, who are, and the total amount of his funding so far is $2,554. Ruben Abrica, $1,500, all self-funded. Donna Rutherford, $2,000, and the others don't have any.
Okay. And how does that compare?
Well, if Regina Wallace-Jones ran for the Palo Alto City Council, she would be 5th out of 6 candidates in terms of money raised, and well below average. Like in Palo Alto, the 2 leading money people now have more than 60,000 or around 60,000. 3rd and 4th place are around 40,000. So, yeah, her contribution probably would have been around the norm a couple of elections ago.
Yeah.
But just for
Not
scale,
too long ago.
Yeah.
for scale, it still pales in comparison to some of the contributions that Palo Alto City Council candidates are getting.
Yeah, I can't personally remember at any time any candidate in East Palo Alto raising this much money, if you want to call it this much money.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's always been sort of grassroots, and you put out a few signs and send out a few flyers and things like that. But
$1 million market. It's
Yeah.
a brave new world.
Everything's rising over there.
I think there's definitely going to be a change in terms of
Yeah.
how politics in East Palo Alto is affected and influenced by the so-called outside forces.
Yeah. Do you sense that people are trying to get endorsed by anyone else in East Palo Alto? Any groups, notable leaders, or anything like that?
Well, the main thing, there are 2 that are endorsed by the Democratic Party. One is Regina Wallace-Jones, and the other one is Ruben Abrica.
Okay.
And so those are the 2 that have received that San Mateo County Democratic Party endorsements. I don't know that anybody else has really seriously sought endorsements. So I don't really know where that
Very
goes.
different.
It's very, very different. I mean, there's certainly no shortage of lawn signs that are next to the freeway.
Okay.
Just go out on the frontage road; you'll see them everywhere.
Okay. Great. Are there any other issues that East Palo Alto is dealing with that you wanted to mention vis-a-vis the candidates and their points of view?
Well, I guess the main thing is when we talk about issues, I think people are really the education part. There's an education component that we didn't touch on here, and the candidates didn't really get into it. But It's certainly been the Ravenswood City School District has been, and the situation there, which is a funding problem and the quality of education has been a big issue for a lot of people.
Sure, yeah. So I'll mention now, so our staff reporter, Elena Kadvani, did video interviews with 8 out of 9 of the current candidates. One dropped out recently. And so the issues there was there's a vote of no confidence by the teachers and the superintendent. There's been budget concerns, really a crisis, issues over communications and transparency. One of the elementary school principals was suddenly reassigned to the district office, which really upset everyone at his school. So there are 6 challengers, 3 incumbents, and all of her video interviews, we've posted them on YouTube, youtube.com/paweekly/videos, and they have Spanish subtitles as well. And she also has an Atavist page for her profiles.
Mm-hmm. Now, the city council doesn't really have any influence. The school district is separate.
They're separate. Mm-hmm.
But I think someone like Ruben DeBricka, who used to be on the school board, basically, and I think Donna was as well, Donna Rutherford. There is, there's a lot of concern. Basically, they would like to. I think Ruben in particular would kind of like to see the city be a little bit more proactive in working to resolve some of the issues regarding education, because they really see education as being so important to to the future of the city and the future of the city's demographic, its current demographic, and not having that just fade away. I mean, it's a very diverse community. You have all kinds of people from all income levels, all races, all cultures. You've got, it's something that East Palo Alto has always really prided itself on. So, the accessibility of housing and jobs and decent education are all things that are really important to the community and important to, I think, all of the candidates. They really want to see that. They may have different ways of trying to get there. Some, Regina, I think, wants to focus more on getting in outside money from big players. And I think there are some others that might think that way as well.
I think she called for more of a partnership between the city and Ravenswood.
Right, and I think Patricia Lopez has also said they need to step up to the plate. Is how she views it, is that she doesn't feel that the people with the big money who want to develop East Palo Alto have enough, are investing in the right types of things. That there has to be more social investment, and I think that that's something that almost all of the candidates feel, that there really should be this sort of a change in the way that communities of color are treated and developed, if you want to call it that. Instead of just the usual model of, hey, we come in with our money, prices go up, people get thrown out, and a new wave comes in. They're saying, and East Palo Alto has been proactive in trying to do this, is to say, no, we have to have a new model. You have to come in and we're not going to necessarily give you everything that you want just the way you want it. You need to bring something to the table if you want to be here. And so that's a different perspective.
So we didn't talk about one issue that has manifested itself in the council race, and that is a dispute between one of the candidates, Patricia Lopez, and a staff member of the East Palo Alto.
And this is, once again, it just shows you what the boiling point is like. They're over the issue of traffic, housing, homelessness, parking. This is really related to, there were kind of 2 issues. One had to do with the RVs. Patricia's very pro helping the RV dwellers in any way. This other person, and do we mention her by name?
Sure, Marie McKenzie.
Marie McKenzie, yeah. She spoke at a council meeting on her as a resident and a taxpayer, not in her capacity of working for the city. And she basically said, she is against one of the things that are being looked at right now in terms of is whether or not to have an ordinance that would ban the oversized vehicle parking. Marie is for that. She's for helping. She said, I'm for helping the RV dwellers, but we have to have some control over this and have control over our community. And I'm not for allowing everybody to just park on the street and have all these oversized vehicles. Patricia is very vocal in terms of not having that overnight
Right.
ban.
Yeah. So what was the boiling point?
Well, the boiling point is just having the difference of opinion.
Yeah, and what happened?
And so I was not at the meeting, but I heard from a number of other people, other witnesses I interviewed, said that Marie got up to speak and during the public comment period, and that Patricia apparently began to yell at her to sit down, and she didn't have a right to speak because that it was a conflict of interest because she works for the city. Some witnesses, it really varies on who you talk to, but some witnesses said, no, Marie then sat down and turned around and began to gesture at her and, I don't know, say something, and then they began to raise their voices. And then at one point, Marie pointed out the door and said, let's go outside, take it outside. And Patricia took that as a challenge to fight and followed her out into the hallway. And then, there were other people on the staff and people in the audience went out to try to break it up. And apparently they stepped in between the two and it didn't turn into blows, but it looked like it could potentially do so.
Okay.
So that really called into question for a lot of people whether or not Patricia Lopez, because she is a candidate, has the personality or the temperament
Right.
to be on council.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody defended her on that, but they felt that it was just bad on all sides.
Yeah. That was unfortunate timing for her.
Yes.
It came out during the election season.
Yeah, she felt she was I was talking to her, she felt she was goaded. And the other half of it, Marie did not feel that she was doing that. She felt she was attacked herself. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I didn't mean to end on that note, but that's where we are. So thanks for the coverage. And again, people can find your profiles for the City Council and Elena's profiles for Ravenswood on paloaltoonline.atavist.com. So thanks. That wraps it up for this week. To follow all of Palo Alto news, go to paloaltoonline.com to talk about this issue or these issues in East Palo Alto. There's quite a bit of conversation going on already. Go to Town Square. That's paloaltoonline.com/square. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please, please, please subscribe or like us below. We'll see you next week.